Anoushka Shankar's latest work, a new music video called Those Words, is a unique all-female collaboration. It takes her EP Love Letters forward, but it's also unique for other reasons. She is that rare artist who uses her music to talk about things that there's generally a culture of silence around, especially when it comes to women. These issues range not just from the personal, like separation and heartbreak, but also to other much more taboo issues like hysterectomies, depression, substance abuse, and yes, also sexual abuse. On Conversations for Change today, Sitarist and composer Anoushka Shankar. Anoushka, tell me a little bit about why you felt the need to make this almost exclusively a female crafted work of art. Right, I think you even wanted women at the back end, like in the sound engineering and the technical roles that are not always fronted by women in this industry.
Thank you for asking about that. It was something that was very important to me. It started from a personal perspective. In the songwriting, I found myself gravitating towards female co-writers because of the nature of what we were talking about, the kind of vulnerability and intimacy of speaking about a broken heart, but also about maybe being a mother at the end of a relationship ending, having children, how these things tend to affect women in different ways than it does men. So I found myself drawn towards women who also could share and understand in that story. But then it became bigger. And obviously in the last few years, we've all been looking in various mediums, various industries with Me Too and Time's Up. And I just realized that also, I may not be a giant company, but I am a woman that employs people. I take people on tour. I hire people to make my records. And I thought, I need to look at this myself, and I need to be looking at how many women I'm hiring compared to men. And I thought, actually, I want to start from now on being a little bit more proactive about the way I work and more actively seek out female engineers, female mixing, female mastering, and do what I can to actually be part of the solution rather than the problem.
So tell me a little bit about how the industry responded to the sense of this female project. And is there a gendered lens when it comes to art? Is it different making music with women than it is making music with men?
From my own experience, I wouldn't say it's gendered in any way that's different from life overall being gendered. Mm-hmm. It's just emblematic of what women are facing in their daily lives. So in any industry, women will be disproportionately affected by the changes that come about by parenting, for example, than their male counterparts. They will not be paid equally as their male counterparts who are doing the same jobs. So all of this will happen in music as well. It's not just that it's happening in music specifically, but that all of this needs to be looked at systematically from the core.
And the fact that this latest work of yours is so personal, right? How difficult was it, in a sense, to use music to bear your soul, literally bear your soul? And when women do that, when we do that, we're often called over-emotional, sometimes we're called hysterical, and somehow we're not paid a compliment for willing to be naked in the public eye, and I mean metaphorically naked, right?
Yeah, like I'll see some of the comments underneath recent videos for sad songs going, oh, she should be smiling more. She used to smile more, and it's like, thanks for thinking that you have the right to tell me what I should be doing with my face,
Yeah.
But, I think we're artists. We have to make the stuff that makes us move, and obviously when I have big life events, I feel compelled to express it artistically, just the way that I feel compelled to express giant global events that enrage me artistically as well. So this particular project of Love Letters, maybe because it came on the back of my album Land of Gold, which was written in a more outward way. I was writing about the ongoing refugee crisis and trying to express, the need for empathy and humanitarianism instead of politicization through music. This was very personal. This was just very much about my experiences and the experiences of my co-writers. But I think with each album and with each year, I'm a musician, maybe I get that little bit more comfortable with being able to be vulnerable. I think I trust my audience. I trust my listeners. I trust the process. I know that every time I bare my soul, I'm okay at the end. And so I start to trust that that's what art does. And it helps other people to connect to that similar part in themselves as well.
You have a piece. You have a piece in the album called Lady Bits, and you actually wrote quite openly about having to have a hysterectomy. You wrote about not having a uterus. You wrote about a very, very painful sort of gynecological reality that you had to live with and come to terms with. What made you talk about and put to music, put to art, things which are not just taboo, but are considered unsexy, non-glamorous, right? Not the sort of things that people want to associate with people in the entertainment industry.
Well, I think with my hysterectomy and talking about my health, it coincided with writing a lot of the songs on love letters, but it was more something I was speaking about than making music about. And I think it came from just getting a sense. I got a sense in the lead up to my surgery that it wasn't talked about like other things. People might have a knee injury and talk very normally about how they need to take time off work because they have a surgery coming up. But I tell you, it was so strange. However many people I spoke to saying I'm going to have a hysterectomy, at least half the women said back, "Oh, I've had one too," especially after a certain age. And I thought, how have all these women I know all had this surgery, sometimes in the times that I've known them? And I've never known about it. There's obviously a sense that this isn't something we speak about. And you know what I'm like. As soon as I realize there's some kind of sense of shame or secrecy, I want to then be a part of trying to lift that. Because I think we deny ourselves aspects of healing and care when we are told that we can't talk about things, So to kind of bring it out into the light, to normalize it, that feels really important.
What has been the toughest thing about this album? I mean, I know the latest video had to be collaborated among the three of you, all three of you in different stages of lockdown in your own respective workspaces. But what has been the toughest part?
I have to say, it's been the easiest piece of work I've ever made. Yeah, it was very simple, very natural. I just found myself gravitating towards making it as authentic and lovely a process as possible. When we recorded in the studio, there were never any extra people. I was lighting candles, I was sitting on a carpet, or hanging out with friends and making music with friends. So it didn't feel like any of that kind of agonizing process that I've seen in the past. And it just sort of flowed very easily, actually.
And what has been the toughest personal thing to talk about in public? Whether it's a song or it's an Instagram post. You have done the range from breaking the silence around sexual abuse. I remember you saying that you were 14 years old when a senior music artist said, "Why don't you come up to my room?" You've spoken about depression, you've spoken about substance abuse, and you've spoken about literally your own lady bits, your own body parts. Of all of these issues, what was the toughest to go public?
I think in 2012, in the wake of the horrific gang rape that happened in Delhi, when I released a video saying I had been abused as a child, which I never necessarily spoke about the details. I was abused from when I was 7 until I was 13. And it's something that I had never really shared. And I just put in the video, I was abused as a child, and this is something that can happen to anybody. It's something that's everywhere and it's systemic. And I think doing that was a good thing. I think it was part of a wave that then grew with many other people starting to speak and share. And then I think that's had a really big impact. But at the time, not many people had really shared. And I think maybe there wasn't the infrastructure for myself to then get the support that I needed for having shared it. It then almost was a very re-traumatizing event because I wasn't prepared for how the news went around the world. I just made a little video in my room and then it was viral. And so to kind of see line after she was abused, she was abused, she was abused, she was abused, it then kind of sent me on a little spiral where I then needed to go and get a little more help and support to make sure I was safe through the process of then continuing to talk about it.
So one of the really difficult things for almost all women who've spoken about sexual abuse is the number of times, as you said, that they're asked to then recount it. The number of times that becomes the affiliated headline, that becomes the associated headline. So I don't want to do that to you, and I don't want to then say, okay, tell me what happened, how did it happen? We've read that it was, as it often is, it was someone within the circle of trust, it was someone you knew well, so you trusted. What I want to understand is how long it stayed with you, how it changed you, how it may have transformed you, and what can you say to other women who may want to speak but are still silent?
Wow, that's such a powerful question. it might feel safest just to speak about myself rather than telling other women what they should do. And if that helps any other woman, then great. I think this is so personal that it's not a one size fits all kind of a thing. For me, being a victim of abuse as a child was an incredibly formative experience. You know, it obviously impacted every future relationship I've had, you know, not just romantic or sexual, but it has affected every relationship I've had. I think there's often a real link between abuse and trauma and addiction, you know, so I think in my case, as someone in recovery as well, I think there are direct links in how those things impact people and how they process pain and how they need to then escape pain in order to live with themselves. I think, however, that, you know, having access to quality therapy and healing has been life-changing for me. And I've undergone years of work with that, which is why I feel able now to sit here and talk and feel safe to be able to do that. So that's something I would strongly encourage. And I also think that for me, choosing to speak about it and then finding a way to get comfortable with that has been part of the move from being a victim to being a survivor. You know, and there is an element of starting to shake off internalized ideas that there is some secrecy, there's some shame, there was something I must have done wrong, all that stuff as a kid that you kind of get from the atmosphere, to then just let that all go and go, this is no different than having any other kind of attack or any other wrong thing happen to me. I played no part in that, you know, and to be able to own that is a very healing thing.
And, you know, but the abuse or the culture of abuse when it comes to women, even if you move from victim to survivor, you learn to cope with the trauma, and in some ways you're right, you know, I think for all of us who've gone through it, and I've spoken about it in my book as well, of being a survivor of child sexual abuse, it does transform every relationship. But then you grow up, you become adults, you become strong professional women, and you find that there is a language of sexual violence that never quite leaves the spaces that we function in as professional women. And I asked you this because you did an interview this past week, and you suddenly found this completely sort of gross commentary in the online spaces below your interview that made you very, very angry. And I want you to speak a little bit about that experience, because all of us go through it every day.
I think that's the tragedy, isn't it? The fact that it's so common and so normal that all of us go through it. I think for me, it was a little bit different entering someone else's media platform and doing a live stream from there. So it felt like I was already slightly on the back foot in a different platform where it wasn't my, you know, my known fans or, you know, anything like that. And, you know, it felt very destabilizing to be trying to just do my work. I think that's the bit where it's like, as women, you're just trying to do your work. You're just trying to do the same work that the man next to you is doing. But whilst trying to do the same work, you've got this underbelly of other stuff that you're having to deal with and contend with at all times. And so to just be going through a live stream, trying to find questions to answer, but then also having just this torrent of abuse at the same time. How do you keep smiling at a screen and doing your work when that's happening? And you have a lot more experience of that than I do.
I was just going to say that. I live with this every single day. Every single day.
And maybe because that aspect of abuse is not something that I tend to have a huge amount. It didn't hurt me a huge amount. It wasn't that. But within 24 hours, I just realized I couldn't sit with it either. And I realized by not addressing it, I was condoning it. And I think that's the thing now as a survivor, is like I'm more prepared to pick up the fight at every step where I can, because it feels like I don't want to be a part of propagating this. I want to be a part of changing it. And so to just speak on that and go, you know what? I understand that this is systemic. I understand that it happens everywhere. I understand that there's a million humans that think they have the right to do this. But what are each of the platforms that have a bit more power doing about it? You know, and that's where I want to see more being done. It's like, what can you do to protect a female artist that's coming onto your platform to share with people?
And I saw that Rolling Stone said, we stand by you, and you found that very paternalistic. And you were like, I don't need you to stand by me. I just need you to sort of offer a safe platform. The comments should have been moderated, mediated. You know, no one can have full control over what people are doing, but there is a way to sort of restrict that kind of language. And you raise a very interesting point. Like, you know, if we keep silent, if we just inoculate ourselves against this abuse that we face on a daily basis in the online space, then are we condoning it in some ways? You know, it might toughen us up. It might be our version of boot camp. Hey, we're not going to let you guys silence us. But why should we take it, right? Why should we accept it? And I think that's the question you're raising.
Yeah, I think it obviously runs all kinds of parallels, which you will be familiar with, but it's about the systemic way that our society functions. And it doesn't matter whether it's sexism, whether it's racism, but with everything that's been happening the last few months with Black Lives Matter, for example, and the kind of idea that it's not enough to not be racist, you have to be anti-racist. You have to be willing to do the work to help disable the system that is already inherently racist. So it's the same thing. It's not enough to just say you don't overtly do sexist things. If you're just living in a sexist system and not doing something to actively improve it, then you are in some way or another enabling a sexist system. So as companies, there is, I think, a greater sense of responsibility to do the work to help achieve equality. It doesn't come by default.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about when you look back at the life you've lived so far, right? And so much has happened. You know, you've been nominated for a Grammy multiple times. You have had to do your own brilliant work to step out of the shadows of your great father, Pandit Ravi Shankar. This is his centenary year. If it weren't for the pandemic, we'd be seeing you in concert. You didn't always know that you were his daughter. Then you didn't always know that you had a half sister. And then everything else that happened to you, right? When you look back at this tumultuous sort of journey, it's a pretty unusual life. That's the extraordinary and wonderful part of it, right? What was the most intense? Was it discovering how old were you, 7 when you discovered you were Panditji's daughter?
Well, he was always in my life, but because my parents married when I was 7, that was the kind of massive life change that happened. So that was definitely a hugely formative event, as you can imagine, sort of switching identities in a way. I would be hard pressed to pick a single most intense event. As you say, it's been an extraordinary life. And I think for me, like, it's been so filled with opportunities and blessings and richness, based on the people that I've been able to meet, the access to art and culture that I've had around the world. And of course, there's been a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of drama as well. But on the whole, it's been a really amazing life that I'm very, very grateful to have lived. I look forward to a lot more, hopefully.
Of course. We're not writing your obituary here. This is just beginning. Being a single parent, juggling a career, I don't want to romanticize that. I don't want to ask only women about it, because that's one of the cliches that we thrust on women. But I do encourage more and more women to talk about it, because I think we need to talk about it without the romance of it. We need to be able to say it's bloody tough sometimes.
Yeah, it's bloody tough sometimes. It's just exactly.
So the lockdown must have made it incredibly tougher in some ways, right?
Lockdown with children was unlike anything I've experienced in my life, in all shades. Some of the most beautiful moments I've had as a parent have been in lockdown. But it's also driven me to the edge of my capabilities and my sanity. And I think as parents, we put our kids first, right? And so as artists, there's this cliche of the suffering artist that goes and immerses in, months of intense night-long recording sessions and practice. And it's like, I've got from 9 to 3 while my kids are in school, and that's when I'm going to somehow wait for brilliance to strike and write that song, and I'm going to just be a parent after that. It's just a different approach. And I think the thing that people don't necessarily realize is, like, should anything happen, the kids come first, right? So any choice that one makes as a parent in work has to always count the kids. So the kids have to come first. I mean, I say no to 70% more of the projects than I say yes to, and at least I'm able to do that. But do you think that happens more to women? Do you think more women have to turn down professional opportunities? Because I have this theory that we've been talking so much about equality at work, but actually we need to be talking about equality at home, because till there's equality at home, there cannot be equality at work, right? Exactly. I keep saying the same thing as well. How can it be? I mean, my experience as a musician is that, some of my band members or people I work with would be on tour within 2 days of their child's birth or 4 days. And I'm not judging that critically, that's their livelihood, but they had the ability to do that because the wife, the mother, was at home taking care of the child. Whereas for someone like me, I am the mother, so how do I do those things? And so systematically, there isn't a situation that enables that kind of equality from home.
Finally, at the heart of Love Letters and, your new video that's just out is female friendship, is female bonding. It is a real thing. I spent a large part of my 20s and 30s disowning my gender,
Right.
wanted to kind of be completely gender neutral. It isn't possible. And in the end, there is that great power of the female friendship, the female bond that does see us through some of the worst moments of our lives.
Yeah, they're my tribe. I don't know how to express like the way that I've been carried, by my circle of women through
Yeah.
difficult experiences. In times of crisis, there is a way that women can come together, which is staggering,
Yeah.
and that's what I experienced in the last couple of years, and sort of wanted to just extend that into the creative process as well. And so that's kind of why I wanted to lean on my sisters, musically as well. And it was a very beautiful experience.
Yes, and I did enjoy the video very much. It's very, very powerful. Something that you want young girls to know, what you tell your 18-year-old self.
To be less afraid. I think there's a sense, I think with every generation it changes, and there's already people 10 years and then more younger than me that I see, maybe are less fearful and more able to just take ownership. But I think that idea that like culturally we have to please our elders, we have to please everyone. So for me as a young person, it was like I needed to please the Indian classical world, that heritage idea, legacy, also my own self, all that stuff. We can never please everyone. So like just to stop wasting any time and energy trying to do that, and to just be authentic and to be truthful to who you really are. You're never going to go wrong if you do that with some sense of like respect and compassion as well.
The toughest thing for women is to allow themselves to be themselves. That's what I always say. Congratulations on your new work, and I hope to see you in India soon when things are better. Anoushka, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.